Hey, it's the vlog ride home. I wanted to do a quick take, I guess. Um, uh, was it yesterday? I think it was. Anyway, I got onto Twitter and I talked about Snape because for some reason he ended up in my head. I think it's because I think it started with a video I watched when you went to studios about a character named Kenny from one of the Walking Dead games. I think that's what ended up starting me thinking about it. Not really sure. You know how your head goes where you have a thought and then a thought and a thought, and by the time you get to a thought that's got your attention, you're not really always sure where it came from. It was kind of one of those situations. I was kind of mean to Snape, and I've been thinking more about it. So I kind of wanted to just do a hot take and bounce some ideas around. I'm going to start rereading the series because it's culturally significant to a lot of people. There is some academic study on the books, so I will have other ideas and opinions to kind of compare what I'm looking at to, which is important. One of the things with criticism is that there's not usually a right answer. There is, because interpretation is left up to the individual reader, and each individual reader is going to be coming at the story from their own framework. On Twitter, I kind of demonstrated the framework that I was approaching Snape from, and that's going to be very different from somebody who does not have the same background that I have. So, but being able to compare what I'm looking at with other critics, with other academic discussions on the works, is helpful to see things that I might have missed, to get other perspectives that might not match my own, things like that. So I think it'd be a good series to examine through a lot of the different lenses. Kind of in the same vein of like what Lindsay Ellis did with Transformers, and film criticism. I'm going to do the same thing with Harry Potter, the Harry Potter series, and literary criticism, looking at the books in different lenses as far as, once I sit down to critique them. So I'm going to be sitting down, I'm going to be doing some rereading and some note-taking, and see if I can find some of the academic discussion that's been done on the books, because like I said, they're culturally significant. We have a whole generation that grew up on them. For a lot of people, these are the first books that they really read in a meaningful way, for some people. And Rowling is still putting out work in that universe, so it's not a dead story, as it were. We had the second Fantastic Beasts movie last year. I don't remember when the next one is slated to come out. I'm really looking forward to it, though. And so, yeah, there's a lot to work with. One of the things that I'm not going to be doing is looking a whole lot at what Rowling says about interpretation of her work. I will sometimes, but not usually. And like on my Twitter, I included her in an at when I was doing my little breakdown on Snape and ripping into him, but that's not to get her attention. That is more to try and engage other fans. So, but yeah, so I'm going to be examining the books, and I don't know when I'll actually sit down with my first real look at it. I don't know. It'll depend on the reading speed and, you know, what is coming to me as far as analysis goes and things like that. So, there you go. And maybe I'll be able to do it in more than just, car ride videos. That'd be nice. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I might do some like snippet thoughts, kind of like what I'm doing here as I'm reading along, just to get some ideas out and maybe conversation started if, I can get people engaged in conversation on it. There you go. So my thoughts about Snape. So on a surface level reading, there are two major tropes with Snape, at least. Okay, hold on. Spoiler warning, I guess. Just in case you don't know the story or for some reason have not finished the books and or the movies, which would be kind of odd if you're here, but maybe. Spoilers. All right. So that said, all right. There's a couple of major tropes at work with Snape. Most especially in the last, I think, 2 books. If I'm remembering my reveals on everything correctly. And one of the things that I'm trying to decide, and one of the things that I will be looking at once I get to that point in the series and rereading it, will be, how much he actually plays into these tropes, and how much he can be seen as kind of going against him a little bit. One trope is antagonist as damaged person, or antagonist because of trauma. And as I said in Twitter, that's not really a trope that I like. Having been somebody who has been through abuse before, a trope like that is not a healthy trope for the mindset of somebody who is coming out of abuse. It's the idea that somebody becomes an antagonist or becomes a villain because of some kind of trauma, whether that trauma is abuse or bullying or poverty. And depending on exactly how that trope is playing out, it's very complicated. Trauma and abuse don't create traumatizers and abusers. Bullying doesn't create violence in a person that did not already have the capacity for that. So that's, it's, and, I grew up with the cycle of abuse being presented in media, not as the cycle of activities that abusers go through in tormenting their victims, but as a cycle of you have person who is traumatized through abuse in some way, who then grows up to be an abuser and abuses a new generation. In popular media when I was growing up, that was a cycle of abuse presented, and it's false. There is a correlation between abuse in childhood and abusers, but that is not causation. There are other factors that come into play with somebody actually themselves becoming abusive, and that is nuance lost in popular media a lot of times, especially when I was growing up. And having something like that reinforced through media over and over repeatedly creates a certain message and a certain perception, and it creates a certain understanding. And remember, I grew up when I couldn't just go to Google and go, what's the cycle of abuse, and find out what the cycle of abuse actually means. I had to depend on resources that I had, and you're a kid and you don't even necessarily think about how something's affecting you, especially when it comes to media where the effect is subtle. It's not about telling you and making you think something so much as this subtle thing that upon repeated seeing it, you begin to think this is what this is. So it's when you are somebody who has been through abuse, seeing something like that presented and internalizing that builds up a lot of anxiety, and it is damaging. So it's not a trope that I like, and while there's a lot of dissection of the trope now and a lot more discussion around, how abuse actually works, and trying to shed a light on there's more shining a light on abuse and the effects of abuse and things like that. It is not a trope that has necessarily gone away, and so Snape does fall within that trope, because he is subjected to bullying from James Potter and his friends, because he comes from a home that was possibly abusive, at the very least neglectful in some ways. That's my understanding of what I can remember from reading the books. He comes from poverty, so there's a lot there to work with on the trope. And so I want to look at that, because I want to see just how he really does fit into it, and if he subverts that at all, and how he does, or if he doesn't, or if there are things that do point to other factors with him, with regards to the choices that he makes as he goes from being a kid into being an adult, leaving Hogwarts and joining Voldemort and all that fun stuff. The other trope, the other big major trope with him is the redeemed by love, because what prompts him to turn against Voldemort and become a double agent, whatever, is finding out that Voldemort is going to go after Harry, which means that Lily is going to be in danger. And so there is with him this idea that his love for Lily is what redeems him, But I don't really think that's the case. I don't think it's his love for her that actually redeems him. I don't remember how all of that boils down in the books as far as what is said and how things are described. I'm remembering back to the movies and like Dumbledore just kind of reaming him over the fact that, he doesn't really care about anything except Lily getting killed. And it kind of strikes me as he still, when it comes to reacting because of Lily, he is still being very selfish in this. And I think I mentioned this in my Twitter as well. He kind of comes across as being very selfish. It's like the whole Snape and Lily thing I'm very torn over. In one sense, it's kind of sweet and endearing, and then in another, it's kind of like, dude, let go, she wasn't that into you. And so it's, yeah, I'm kind of torn on that. And I'll look at it again, because I'm going to be doing, especially with this, I'm going to be doing a close reading. But I don't think Lily is actually what redeems him. I think it is more developing empathy for Harry. I think that is where his actual redemption arc lies. Because it is sweet and it is romantic to turn against this evil that you served because this evil has killed your true love or whatever. That said, grief is, I don't want this to sound bad, but grief is kind of a selfish thing. For me at least, when I grieve, my focus is on what I have lost. If somebody dies and I grieve over their death, I am grieving about the fact that they are no longer alive and in my life. That's where that focus is. When I say selfish, selfish always has a negative connotation to it, unfortunately, but I guess self-centered has a negative connotation too. Self-focused. There we go. Grief is still, for me at least, a self-focused thing. So it's hard for me to see him turning, against Voldemort as anything except a self-focused action. He is not doing this for the greater good. He's not really doing this for somebody else, because Lily's dead, so he can't really be doing this for Lily. He's doing this for his memory of Lily. He's doing this for his feelings of Lily, but this is still for himself that he's doing it. He turned and followed Voldemort for himself, and he's turning away from Voldemort for himself. He does come to develop empathy for Harry, who he hates at first for what turn out to be very complex reasons. But at the end, he doesn't. And I think that is the real turning point for him as a character. And I think that is where he truly goes from being an antagonist to not an antagonist. That is my reading anyway. And that's my reading looking back. that may change later when, I get to that point in the books again. We'll see. It'll be interesting to look back at this and these thoughts, once I've had a chance to reread the books and sit down and do the kind of analysis that I want to do with them. But those are my thoughts, kind of delving a little bit deeper into what I was tweeting about the other day. This is thinking about the motivations of a person and the effects of past events and past traumas on a person. These are things that fall in line with psychoanalytic criticism, and which is kind of a broad topic, because I will probably be using this lens later when I talk about Snape and do a deeper examination of his turn, or at least the reveal of his turn. I'll be doing a deeper dive with psychoanalytics most likely. So I will probably hold off on doing any big theory video about it until we're to that point. But I think I will do some, quick takes or whatever as I'm reading, just to kind of get some thoughts out there and whatnot, like I said. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about on that. So look forward to some discussions about Harry Potter. And in the meantime, if you want to see more, especially if you want to see more about Harry Potter, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm not going to be just talking about Harry Potter on here. Obviously, I've talked about some other stuff as well, and will continue to do so. I had, on my blog, I wrote about my thoughts on Battle Angel, and I kind of would like to grab those ideas again and look at them and maybe expand on some of the stuff, because there are some interesting tropes that I felt in my viewing of it that the movie was working to subvert, and I found it very interesting. So I would like to take a dive into that again. So at some point, I'll probably talk about Alita Battle Angel. We talked about Pokemon not too long ago. I do want to take a dive into talking about Fallout 76, and maybe Fallout 4. I don't know. Fallout 4 is the game that brought me into the franchise, as far as playing it, enjoying it, being a fan. I've not gone back to play the older ones. I don't know if I will or not. Mostly that's just a time thing. So, but I found Fallout 4 really, really interesting, and it's a lot of fun to play. Its story is also touching and interesting and subversive in some ways. So I might talk about it. I do want to talk about 76, especially because there's a lot of hate that got directed at 76, and while Bethesda did take some legitimate missteps with a lot of stuff, the game itself is very good, and I don't know that the game got a very fair shake in a lot of circles. I think there is a very big difference between the type of game that Fallout 4 is and an MMO. And I think overall, Bethesda did a pretty good job in bringing 76 and bringing the Fallout franchise over into an MMO, mostly because it is not massive. Each of the servers, each of the world servers has a very small maximum cap compared to what an MMO usually carries. If you go and you play EverQuest, you're going to be on a server with, thousands of people. And, on Fallout, I think that the world server cap is like 20. It's really small. So, which I think is a good idea. But that's something I'll talk about if I talk about 76, or when I get to. I got to figure out of movies coming up, what I want to go see and what I'm going to be able to go see. There are a few coming out that I want to check out. I don't really care about going and seeing a live action Lion King, because I don't really see the point in it. The appeal for watching watching a cartoon or an animated movie go into live action is just not something that I'm going to get from The Lion King. There is not a lion actor that I think is really cool and that I would be awesomely excited to see take on the role of Simba. So there is not, if I wanted to watch The Circle of Life come to life in real life, I'll just go to Netflix and watch Planet Earth. So for me, for what I look for in a live action adaptation of an animated movie, there's not any appeal in going and seeing The Lion King. However, I will try to go see Aladdin when it comes out. I don't think it's out yet. See, this is how well I keep up with movies, right? I gotta do better. I am interested in Aladdin. And what else is coming up here soon? Oh, that dog movie. Oh God, what is it called? It's not A Dog's Life. It's what is it called? I'm sitting in the movie theater. It's Mother's Day. I think it was Mother's Day when I saw it. When I saw the preview for it, and I'm sitting in the movie theater, and the preview comes on for this movie, and I start crying. The Alita Battle Angel preview made me cry. Made me scream in the movie theater because I was so excited that this was actually going to happen. I don't think I have ever had a movie preview make me cry. And I was doing stealth dabbing of tears, right? I was not going to let anybody know that I was crying in the theater. I was not ever going to admit to this happening until I'm on my Facebook and one of my friends is talking about seeing this and how he started bawling in the theater. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. I have never, ever had a preview make me cry. So I am terrified to see this movie because one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm not going to stop crying the whole time this movie is going on, because if the previews can make you cry, God help you when you're in the theater, I'm going to have to take a whole box of tissue, or I'm going to get in the theater and I'm going to be disappointed because all the good scenes were put into the preview. So I'm really scared to see this movie, but I also kind of want to see this movie. So these movies, if I can get out to go and see them, I'll be talking about those probably as ride homes. And I think Harry Potter is going to take up the bulk of my reading for a while. So anything not Harry Potter that I'm talking about will most likely be movies or TV shows or games, most likely. So anyway, but yeah, if you like this, and don't mind my rambling about plans coming up, then please like, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit me up. Any thoughts that you have about Snape, as far as, the turn that he takes, any thoughts that you had, please, shoot me a line on Twitter or comment below, and peace.